Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Lihod Rachmilovich. I'm running the pre-sale and customer support in OnBackup. And with me today, Eric Sinard from Republic Bank. And today we will talk with you about how to seed your sandbox with an optimized, anonymized data set for training and development purposes. So here we are. In this session, Eric will talk about his journey with Salesforce and with OnBackup. Then we will talk about the challenges of Sandbox Seeding, a live demo, and a couple of minutes for questions. All right?
Sounds good. Morning, everybody. Are we having fun yet? Excellent. So a little bit about the bank. We are based in Louisville, Kentucky. Originally, the bank was founded in Shelbyville, Kentucky in 1977. We have a history in the communities we serve as a long-standing traditional community bank. We're slowly but surely going more into the digital realm. We now have a digital-only brand, which is Memory Bank at mymemorybank.com, which is good nationwide. So that's been a bit of a transition, and as part of that, we're getting into the Salesforce end of things to try and drive that more vociferously. For myself, I have a history. I've spent most of my career as an IT generalist, and I've been for about a year and a half working on the Salesforce platform. So the implementation that we are going through at the bank was started in March of this year. We had our first substantial set of users actually went live in Service Cloud last week. We're having our Sales Cloud users go through training and go live as they're trained, which that started yesterday. So I'm hoping that's going well. I haven't heard otherwise, so fingers crossed on that one. So as far as the implementation is concerned, we have kind of two sets of data which are in there for the users before we get started, which we're integrating our core banking system through our data warehouse, and we have integrations with our account opening platform. So there's kind of data in there already. So specific to the OnBackup solution, there are tools within Salesforce, which it's a pretty good crowd, so I imagine you're all familiar with the fact that what you can do to back up and recover for Salesforce with the tools that exist on the platform is extremely limited. You can basically get a zip file full of CSVs once a week, and that's not particularly timely, and if you had to recover a substantial amount of data from that, it's extremely complicated to do that. And often would require the services of a data integration specialist, which not everybody has. So that was why even before we were live on the platform, we wanted to look into backup. And OnBackup, we tested several solutions pretty thoroughly with our existing data, and OnBackup was the one that we found we had the best results with. There are two features. The Smart Alerts feature that I'll hit on real quickly is basically you can set rules in OnBackup that says if more than 5% of my account records change in a day, send me an alert that says something bad probably happened and you should look into it. So that's useful, particularly if you have batch integrations which are touching a lot of records on a regular basis. The specific feature that we want to talk about here is the Sandbox Seeding feature, which is anybody who has ever worked in a developer sandbox with no data to actually develop code or declarative functions is probably familiar with the fact that it's difficult to test without any data in there. And the Sandbox Seeding feature is nice in a couple of ways because it prevents your developer from having to spend time manually creating records and maybe failing at getting the relevant data in those records, because that's not what he wants to be doing. He wants to be working on his code. So the Sandbox Seeding feature gives you the ability to push production data down into a sandbox, anonymize it so that we're a bank. We don't want to push PII into a developer sandbox, particularly if there's a contractor that's working in that sandbox. So it allows you to anonymize it as it goes down, but it's a representation of your real production data that you can use to test against. And that is very useful. It's relatively straightforward to get accomplished, and it gives you the ability to do testing and give your developer that ability to test and spend no time dealing with trying to create the data to test against, which is extremely handy. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Lihod.
Thank you very much. So what we will talk about today is what happened in the reality. You have your production environment, you have your developer pro, partial, full sandboxes that you are using for development, training, and QA purposes. Based on a couple of research, 43% of software developers are spending between 10 to 25% of their time on debugging production bugs on production environment. Think about how much time they can use to actually develop new features in their development. So instead of debugging errors, they can actually create new features. So in order to have better bulletproof, I would say, features in your production environment, you should use your sandbox environments for development, for testing, and for training before deploying it into production. There are 4 main challenges when we are talking about seeding your sandbox with data for development. The first one is maintaining full sandbox. Many customers say, hey, we have our full sandbox for UAT or pre-prod purposes, but it can cost you 20 to 30% of your total cost for Salesforce. It's very, very expensive, and I'm not sure that each and every one of you can actually afford it. The second challenge is developers cannot fully test it when the limited data is irrelevant for this specific feature. And the ability to actually see the sandbox with the relevant data will happen like this. 3, the main challenge for me, I work for a cybersecurity company, is PII, all right? Protecting your confidential data and not expose your developers or your partners to PII is super important. We will see in a couple of seconds how you can anonymize the data easily so it will be valuable for your testing and training, but you will not create any security leaks. And the last one, slow and inefficient development cycles. It's very slow to refresh the sandbox, create all of those manual process through replicate data from one environment to another and maintaining the relationships. You may, once you create those records in the sandbox, you may trigger some automations, workflow validation rules, or triggers that might send some emails to your users. You want to avoid those as well. And there is a better way. On-backup sandbox seeding allows you to speed up your development cycle, to easily select, preview, and refine the perfect data set for training or development purposes, to maintain the relationships and the data integrity automatically, to replicate large and subset of the data easily, to anonymize the data, to compare the metadata of your production or in the sandbox before and prior the replication, and of course to manage multiple production and Salesforce environments from a unified screen. So we'll jump to the live demo. As you can see here, this is the home page of OnBackup. OnBackup is an external independent web application that allows you not only to protect your Salesforce environment, production environment, but also to protect your sandbox environments. You can manage all of your environments from a unified screen. OnBackup leverage the Salesforce API allows you to back up the data and the metadata automatically. The fact that we already have your data and metadata allows us to easily compare the metadata and the data across 2 different environments, and of course, to replicate the data directly into your sandboxes. So any environment here, any service here can be used as a source for the replication. And let's see how we can actually replicate the data. I will use the data replication tool to replicate data from a production environment into my developer sandbox. you can select any environment as a source. The source can be also a refreshed sandbox, which allows you to archive those environments before you refresh them, so you will be able to use the data and the metadata in future tasks. In this case, I will select my production environment. And then I have 3 options for the replication. A full org will actually clone my entire environment to the destination. A full org with delete will clean the destination first and then replicate the entire environment. So this even works with the full sandbox. Your dev cycle is 3 months or 2 months or 1 month, but the data got dirty after a couple of days. You want to refresh just the data. You can use on backup to replicate just the data without affecting the metadata. Or you can be a very, very granular and selective on which object you are going to replicate. So in this case, I'm going to replicate my account object, and I will select 5 level of relationships. So on backup will grab all the associated data as well into my sandbox, and I will include the attachments. Then you can select which snapshot you are going to use. On backup provide you a daily snapshot of your environment. You can use a snapshot from any point in time, and we also have labels. So I will select the template that I've created 3 months ago to replicate the data. And then I will select the destination. The destination can be any sandbox. Developer sandbox, Developer Pro, partial, or full sandbox. And look at this feature. We allows you to automatically disable all the validation rules, triggers, and workflows in the destination. So it can save you a lot of time, and right after the replication, we will re-enable those. And now I will hit the preview button, and the preview button will actually compare the schema of both environments. I will hit the preview button. It will compare the schema of both environments. We will make sure that you have the object that you just selected on the destination as well, and make sure that you have everything in order to replicate the data. On this stage, it will take a couple of seconds. You will be able to see all the objects and all the records that we are going to replicate. At this point, you will be able to select how many records you want to replicate from each object. If you want to exclude or include any of those objects, you will be able to do it as well. And of course, you will be able to anonymize it. I'm sorry about the performance. It looks like the internet is not the best, but it might take another second. I will just open the previous one that I've created a couple of minutes ago. Interesting. All right, so we are going to replicate the account object with 5 levels of relationships from our production environment into our sandbox environment. And this is the data set that we can see here. 799 records on the account object. More than 1,700 contacts and more than 1,700 opportunities. Let's imagine that this is a way big number, and this won't fit to my sandbox environment, and I want to replicate just a subset of the data. So I will click on the option, and here on the account, on the parent object, it allows me to select subset of the data with 3 options. The first one is manual. I can download the CSV file, select the record that I want to replicate, and upload it back to the platform. The second option is just to select number of records based on the IDs, newest, oldest, or random. And the last option is SQL query, which allows you to easily filter this data set based on any filter. For example, replicate all the accounts records where the type equals customer, or the owner ID equals that, or the country equals that. It's very, very easy. I will select to replicate just 50 records. And in addition, I would like to anonymize my contacts. I don't want to replicate social security number, email, phone, names. So I will hit the anonymize button. You can also select the language that you want to anonymize the data to, and you can click save. On backup allows you to anonymize the data automatically. I will hit the preview button so we will be able to see the smaller data set in a second. While it's running, I will explain that the anonymization actually anonymize not only the standard fields, but also custom fields on custom objects. We are doing it by determine the name, the label, or the type and masking type of each field. And that way, we will anonymize it automatically for you. And we will keep the syntax and the structure of the value. My name, Lihod Rachmilovich, will be converted to John Schmo. My email address will be converted to something else. My phone number will keep the same structure and the same for security, social security number, credit card number, or any other object. So it will be valuable for your testing. And what we will be able to see here in a second is that we have a small data set of our environment. Very, very slow. I'm sorry about that, but it might take another second, and we will be able to see the small data set that we just prepared. I will open it to questions while it's loading. Any questions so far? Yes, please. If I can reverse a replication, so basically what you will have to do is to go to the destination and delete the records with the mass delete option or with a data loader or workbench.
So it does actually give you a results file. So if you loaded records that you then wanted to delete, you would have a file with all the IDs you want to delete. So it would be pretty straightforward.
That's correct. So what you will be able to see on the log files is the old IDs and the new IDs for each specific record from each specific object. So if you need to update your integrations with the new IDs, if you need to update anything else, you will be able to get those log files and see exactly which record have been replicated, what is the new ID, what is the old ID, and in that way, it will simplify your replication. It will allow you to easily seed your sandboxes with a small data set that will take you a couple of minutes instead of manual process that might take you a couple of hours or even more than that. Any other questions? I really apologize for the results page, but it looks like the internet is not with us today. So I would like to thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this morning. On Backup allows you to have a 14 days free trial or a free POC with us, so you will be able to test and make sure it meets your needs and meets your requirements. Thank you very much.